especially with the pandemic. So let's get started. How do you get your brand on more store shelves and into the hands of shoppers? As I mentioned, this is the exact presentation that I was going to give to the Canadian Organic Trade Association at Expo West, but of course it was canceled. So what they did is they asked me to help them help their members get products in the U.S. What does it look like? What does the U.S. environment look like in terms of retail selling? A lot of these things are going to impact you as well. And I think what's interesting is when you start looking at, for example, what the organic shopper looks like in the U.S. versus Canada, there's some very big differences. So, nothing happens until someone buys your product, and shoppers can't buy them if they can't find them. So what we want to do is we want to make it easier for shoppers to find and buy your products. So if you don't know who I am, my name's Dan Lohman. So let's get started. 80% of natural brands fail within the first year, and I'm committed to change that. Retail is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So we want to help you plan for long-term growth, and that's why we're having these conversations. So the status quo is that the retailers have all the power, and I want to challenge that. I want to challenge it because that's not true today anymore. And the reason for that is that the shopper journey's changed, and shoppers have literally unlimited choices as to where they spend their hard-earned money. And the goal is to try to get the customers to stay within your store. And this is where you come in. This is how you can help the retailer. So what I'm getting at is that the retailers need you as much as retailers need brands as much as brands need retailers. And so remember, retailers want three things. Retailers want more traffic in their store, they want a reasonable profit in their category, and they want a competitive advantage in their market. And if you can help the retailer achieve those things, then savvy retailers will return the favor and help you with incremental distribution, incremental opportunities, etc. This is exactly how I was able to push around some of the biggest, most iconic brands on the planet, like P&G and Frito, etc. It's worked for my clients. It can work for you too. So remember, savvy retailers want brands, willing and able to help them grow sustainable sales. Now, this is a process. And as I was talking to Dave yesterday and talking to other people throughout the last several years, retailers are resistant to allowing you to come in and help them. And I get that. And that's because a lot of retailers, when I used to be a retailer, brands would come up to me and say, this is what I need you to do for me, for my brand. Point is, we're going to change that conversation. We're going to build that know, like, and trust factor. And as you begin to build that trust with the retailer, then if we present ourselves properly, then they're going to look to us as a resource. And this is how you become much more than just another package on a store shelf. Retailers want to remain relevant. So what do I mean by that? Remember, shoppers have literally unlimited choices as to where they go spend their money. And if we can help a retailer remain relevant, meaning keep that customer coming back into the store again and again and again. And when they come into the store, get them to buy everything on their list. That's the way that we're going to help the retailers remain relevant in their market by leveraging the strength of our products. So some questions I want you to be thinking about that we're going to try to answer today. So what's fueling CPG growth? How do retailers and brands grow sustainable sales in any economy? And this is critical, especially now with the pandemic. How do retailers and brands work together to support and take advantage of the better for you trend, or what some of us call natural? How important are shoppers when considering different merchandising strategies, and what does the future of retail look like? Well, one of the best attended webinars that I've had thus far is how to future-proof your store in uncertain times. If you haven't seen it, I'd go back and watch it. And the reason for this, I talk about how you can help the retailer address these specific needs, remain relevant, drive more shopper traffic in the store, etc. So before we do that, we need to discuss a couple important terms. So one, share of wallet. So share of wallet, think about when you put together a list of all the things that you're going to buy every single month, and let's say I'm going to spend $400 this month. That's what's everything on my list. The goal is to try to get the customer to spend as much of that $400 in their store rather than go somewhere else, or invite them to shop their competition. And then market basket. Market basket is the sum total of all the dollars that a customer spends when they check out of a store. Now, the reason this is important is because we want to change the way retailers think about the customer. Instead of thinking about the customers buying one item, we want help the retailers understand that customers buy a lot more than one item. So I put this slide in because what's interesting is that when I share this with large groups, brokers, distributors, and excuse me, and brands, et cetera, when I give talks, most people can't answer these questions. And the reason I put it in there is because if our customers are confused about what these terms mean, then how can we help them if we don't understand them? So this is where you have an opportunity to help educate your retail partners as to what's important about your brand. For example, not natural doesn't mean anything. Non-GMO, that just simply means that the seed is actually non-genetically modified, but it can be grown in pesticide and herbicide sprayed crops. Organic, that's the best of everything. In organic, everything is automatically non-GMO. And then clean label doesn't mean anything, but it does have a connotation of healthy quality products. And so again, leverage these terminologies to help your retail partners succeed by understanding the value of the products that you're bringing to the store. And more importantly, when you're talking to your consumers, your shoppers, help them understand and appreciate why these terms are so very important. So innovation is the key to growth across all categories. And I don't know if you've seen or not, but because of the pandemic, a lot of the big brands are pulling back on their innovation budget, on their R&D budget. So this is the perfect time for us to step up and take a leadership role in this. And the best part about it is that as large brands struggle to keep the shelves full, we have a unique opportunity to go in and take that space with little or no fight, and then hopefully prove ourselves. So when the big brand finally gets their product back in stock, the retailer says, you know what, I like this other brand better. They've been treating me pretty well. So true innovation is fueling sustainable growth in every category. So what do I mean by that? Big brands, their idea of innovation is changing a packaging or a color or something in their product instead of real innovation, not creating products that customers want. I'll give you an example. I worked with a big company several years ago, and they had an energy drink, and they put a different label on it. Then it was a breakfast drink. They put a different label on it. Then it was a diet drink, and they put a different label on it, and it was a functional beverage. My point is there were 5 different versions of that product, different labels, et cetera, but it was really the same product, and customers are wise to this. So true innovation is putting the shopper's needs first and developing products that fully meet their needs. And that's what we do. And the reason we do that is because we're more closely related, more closely aligned with our customers. We're closer to them, and they're actually telling us what they want and what they want to buy from us. So one of the things I say a lot is that you should not work with a broker and distributor. There are things you need to be aware of, things you need to be thinking about. There are good brokers and distributors, just like there are good doctors, bad doctors, good mechanics, etc. However, I'm a firm believer that you should never blindly hand the keys to your store, to your business, over to anyone. And the reason for that is because in order for brokers to be effective or efficient, they rely on cookie cutter strategies. The same strategy that they use to sell motor oil is the same strategy that they use to sell your organic baby food. Now, that's a good thing and it's a bad thing because it costs a lot less money to hire an external sales team than it does to have people on your payroll working for you. So I get the trade-off. However, there are ways to get more out of them. There are ways to hold them accountable. And more importantly, if you leverage these strategies and help hold them accountable to them, that's the win-win. That's how you are able to expand your sales, grow sales, et cetera, by leveraging them as an extension of your brand. Your creativity is your greatest asset. You put your whole heart and soul into creating a product that's going to disrupt the world. Why shouldn't your go-to-market strategy be every bit as creative as the strategy, as the ingredients in your package? And the reason I'm saying this or focusing on this is because a lot of brands follow the tried and true rinse and repeat strategy that every other brand follows. And we want to change that because you can't stand out on a crowded shelf if you're doing everything the same way every other brand does that you compete with. So in today's competitive environment that demands advanced strategies that overlook, category management was founded to get rid of or weed out some of the excessive cost in CPG and also to help us connect better with the consumer. So getting this right can add rocket fuel to your sales. Failure to get this right can be catastrophic. A lot of brands fail because they follow cookie cutter strategies, because they don't align themselves or don't try to learn the advanced strategies we're talking about here and throughout the podcast and everything else I do. So as I mentioned, true category management. True category management actually is a term that I'm trying to coin. And the reason for that is when I tell people that I am a category management expert, they say, aha, you're the guy that keeps the shelf full, et cetera. I can do that. But the reality is what I do is I help give brands the advanced strategies, teach brands the advanced strategies that the big brands rely on. So the reason that matters is how do you maximize your sales? How do you maximize your trade marketing? How do you reduce the amount of wasted spending that you've got out there in terms of your trade spending? How do you maximize your inventory at every store, et cetera? These are the simple things that brands need to be thinking about. They're not as complex or difficult as a lot of people would believe. So I'm trying to help give you those strategies and teach you how to leverage that at retail. So some of you might have seen this, but I want to go over it again. And the reason it's important is when thinking about organic, because that's the focus of today's presentation, I want to highlight the fact that natural organic products are responsible for all the sustainable growth across every category. So back in 2016, I was able to prove this. Nielsen gave me access to all their outlet data. That's almost $1 trillion worth of product sales in the US. So in this example, I found that total food sales are up 1.9%, total organics up 11%. Natural organic represented only 7.7% of that massive, massive pie. And total U.S. food sales, if you remove natural and organic, was only up 1.2%. So let me drive this home. So total dairy, organic dairy, total dairy, is up 1.5%. Organic dairy is up 12.1%. Organic dairy only represented 9.8% of that pie. Massive, massive pie again. If you remove that small sliver of organic, then total dairy would be up only 0.5%. The point is this. Natural organic products are responsible for all the sustainable growth across every category and every channel. And as I've done projects since then, it's even more of a dramatic percentage change. And what I'm getting at is that when you look at plant-based, kosher, gluten-free, et cetera, those are the products, your products, that are responsible for all sustainable growth across every category. And this chart here, I'll go ahead and make sure that you guys can go back and watch this video again. You can look at it later if you want to study it. But as you can see, that's true with every category across the entire store. So what does the natural shopper look like, and why does this matter? There's a myth out there that if you discount the price, that's the only way to get people to buy products. That's not true. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, have you ever gotten a great deal on something that you didn't like? Of course, we all have. The committed natural shopper does not settle. They want what they want. And the point here is this. If price was the only driver to get customers to buy things, then luxury and decadent items would be declining in sales, and they're not. So key point here is that customers want value, real value, and they appreciate the value that an organic or a natural product offers over and above their mainstream counterparts. So how well do you know your shopper? And the reason this is important is because when I started, it was female, had a household, 2.3 kids, et cetera. That's not enough. In other words, people are taught to commoditize what the shopper looks like. What we want you to do is we want you to go well beyond that and think about who is your shopper, who's your ideal shopper, and how do they shop the store. So When you think about who your shopper is, are they vegan? Are they a low-cost consumer, lifestyle, health, and sustainability? If you don't know what that is, mainstream solution providers, et cetera, think of a aloha shopper, someone who goes out and eats a couple salads and goes for a walk. I know I joke about that a lot, but the point is that a low-cost consumer is someone who's interested in reducing their carbon footprint, who's interested in sustainable agriculture, regenerative agriculture, stuff like that. And so this is the customer that understands the true benefit of an organic product. And this is the customer that is going to spend a premium to get the products that they want and need. And that all begins with your consistent brand messaging. The reason I created, and if you haven't taken it yet, it's free, take my Turnkey Sales Story Strategies course and go through the entire thing. Better yet, go through it with your team. So the idea is this. If I tell you a story and you tell someone else and they tell someone else and so on, by the time the story comes back around to me, it's unrecognizable. If you can get your entire team to share your story, the same commitment, authenticity, enthusiasm, and passion throughout your entire sales funnel, you're going to be more successful than most every brand out there, first. Secondly, this is the foundation you build your brand on. It always amazes me how many people think they know who their ideal consumer is and how people buy their products. When you go through the exercises in this course, you learn so much more about the customers that buy your products. For example, if you had an opportunity to talk to everyone in the shopping aisle and say, why did you choose my product over another product? Or how to use my product once you get home? Those insights are invaluable. And if you can leverage those insights at retail, that's going to give you significant and sustainable competitive advantage. So what I'm going at here is that if you can build a thriving community around your brand outside of traditional retail, this is the opportunity for you to future-proof your brand. I've said for years now, what would happen if all the brick and mortar stores were to disappear? What would you do? Who would you sell your products to? Not knowing that there would be a pandemic. The point is this: as long as you've got that relationship with your customer, that gives you an opportunity to sell to them, to reach out to them. There are creative strategies that I'm putting in my Trade Marketing Essentials course that you can leverage to actually reduce your trade spending by rewarding those customers outside of traditional retail. In addition to that, you can leverage that community for innovation. In other words, instead of putting a product on the shelf, waiting 6 months, think about the packaging, paying slotting and all that other stuff that you've got to spend to get a product into distribution. Instead of going through all that hassle to validate whether a product makes sense, ask your community. Hey, what do you think about this? Do you want us to make one in pumpkin or chocolate, or, what preferences do you have? And they'll tell you what products that they want to buy. And they will go out of their way to support you and help you succeed. And this, again, is how you future-proof your brand. So think about the impact on the market basket. And I told you the market basket is the sum total of what everyone purchases when they check out of the store. So you want to highlight the promotion's impact on the market basket. When you're promoting your product, displaying your product, whatever you're doing with it, you want to focus on how your product supports the market basket overall. And remember, by the way, when a customer comes in to buy a product, for example, organic, they're going to buy a lot of other premium organic products throughout the store: organic dairy, organic milk, organic spread. The point is this: instead of thinking about trying to squeeze margin out of one single item, the traditional strategy, we want to teach retailers how to think about the entire market basket and the added value that your products have in terms of not only keeping the customer in the store, but generating higher sales, higher profits, higher returns. And we also want to make it easier for customers not to go somewhere else and buy products. So how does your item drive premium product sales? These are conversations you want to have with the retailer. And you want to focus on the market basket size. When your product's in the basket, how much are the sales? When it's not in the basket, how much are the sales? By the way, one of the great ways to get this, because it's real expensive to buy this kind of data, is you can ask your consumers. You can ask your community, You can ask your community, what do you buy when you buy our product? Another great reason to have a community outside. And then you want to show the item count growth. Again, you can get this information from your community. When you buy our products, what are the other products that you're buying at the same time? And you want to show the traffic increase. How are you helping the retailer drive additional customers into their store? And you want to talk about the loyalty. Loyalty is, a lot of people think that loyalty is something that's embossed on a plastic card. Reality is that loyalty is something that's earned. And the way you earn loyalty is by giving customers what they want and need. In other words, true loyalty comes from exceeding a customer's expectations. And it's as simple as literally making sure that their products are available where they want them at a reasonable price and making shopping easy for them. So if you can help the retailer achieve that, that's how you convert an occasional customer into a loyal evangelist. And you want to highlight the impact on the market. When you promote your product at a retailer, how is that impacting the retailer sales versus their competition? In other words, are you taking sales away from the competitor? Because that's what they want. And you want to focus again on the long-term game. So when you're promoting your products, how is that growing sales over time? If you're promoting your products and there's really not doing anything to drive sales or drive incremental sales after the promotion ends, you're just throwing your money away. And you want to become a trusted and valued resource for your retail partners. In other words, we want them to call you first when they've got an extra incremental promotion or an extra something and they need help with merchandising, or they have a question about what the category looks like or what the consumer looks like. We want to change your perspective, and this is something that doesn't happen overnight. This is something we need to work at repeatedly as we work with the retailer, as we prove ourselves to them. And again, we want to continue to go back to the market basket, why traffic and market basket size are important. This is how a retailer remains relevant. This is how an independent retailer, for example, competes against the big retailer in their market. So you want to leverage your online strategy to also drive sales to traditional retail. Now, a lot of people think of those as being two separate buckets. And I want you to rethink about that. So in other words, if you're promoting a product in Amazon, you can also leverage that promotion to drive sales in a traditional retailer. So think about the art and science of getting your product into more shoppers' hands and be creative with it. How can you build that exposure about your product within a given community online and then leverage it to drive sales in traditional retail? As I mentioned, you want to own your own brand strategy, and you need to make this a priority. As I mentioned, a lot of brands don't do that. They effectively hand the keys to someone else to run their business. Again, that's a huge, huge mistake. And the reason that's a mistake is because they're not as passionate about your brand. Remember, your brand has your name on it, but they're not as passionate about your brand. They're not going to put forth the same effort, enthusiasm, and energy to sell your brand as you do. In addition to that, they've got to worry about sometimes hundreds of other brands at the same time while they're thinking about your brand. So you don't want to ever farm out your strategy. You want to own your brand strategy. And you want to become a trade marketing expert. I've alluded to this several times. The greatest opportunity for you to get incremental cash to put back into your business, to fuel innovation, to fuel brand growth, etc., is from maximizing your trade spending. And this is something I've been talking a lot about on the different webinar series, et cetera. So go back and look at some of those different webinars. Go back and review some of the content I've got there. In fact, I recently put a free trade promotion ROI calculator on my website. Again, it's free. And this will allow you to go in and figure out, how much am I spending on a promotion? What is the lift if I put more money into an into an OI coupon or something like that? So play with that and leverage that to experiment and learn more about how do you maximize each and every opportunity that you have to promote your brand. And you want to focus on need states. And the reason that this matters is you think about what a need state. So what is a need state? If I've got a cold, then my need state is cold and flu. Those are the things I want to go looking for to solve that problem. If it's dinner time, my need state is to find products for, food that I can have for dinner. What's a good meal solution, et cetera. So you want to become an expert on your shopper and your competitor's shopper, and you want to think about their need state. What problem are you solving, and how can you make it easy for that customer to buy that product, buy that solution, solve that problem? And you always want to put the customer first, always. Now, the reason I put this in here is because big brands spend a lot of time talking at us. Hey, we're great. Hey, we're number one, etc., rather than talking to us and letting us know how they're going to help us solve a problem. This is where smaller brands come in, natural brands come in. That intimate relationship that we have with our customers, we need to make sure that we're listening to them, and we need to make sure that our customers know that they are our priority, always. Traditional methodologies around product segmentations overlook what really matters to the shopper. And what I'm getting at here is when you look at any of the databases, the syndicated databases, any of the traditional solutions that are out there, even consumer data, et cetera, they tend to commoditize the shopper. And the products. And so what we want to do is we want to differentiate ourselves by being able to dig down into the category and actually modify the database or modify the insights so they fit our specific consumer. And this is my secret sauce. This is what I do to help brands out. And the point is this, is that the more personalized you can build your messaging, your understanding of the customer, the better the insights, the better understanding of what's going on in the category. And I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I did a project for Pacific Foods. And they came to me and they wanted to put together some innovation around meal times, and entrees, et cetera. And so they asked me to look at it and see whether or not that would make sense. Well, when I looked at the data at first glance, it didn't make any sense at all. It was a horrible idea. Entrees were tanking. But then when you start looking at the category from the perspective of the consumer, Asian meals are in one aisle, Hispanic meals are in another aisle, mac and cheese is in another aisle, et cetera. And when you break the products out into the individual aisles, the way that the customer shops, the way the retailers merchandise, then it was a brilliant idea. And I was able to give them a strategy to help them launch their product. And they were very successful. They've since discontinued the products, as far as I understand. But the point is, that would not have been possible had they not had those insights. So think about how your consumer shops, become an expert in your customer, and then let's leverage that as you go to put together your go-to-market strategy. And remember, when you're communicating with the retailer, what are the unique problems your brand solves? And you want to start with the market basket and work backwards. So think about going to the checkout line, looking in the customer's basket, and then figuring out what did they buy, and then retrace their steps backwards to the store and develop promotional strategies and merchandising strategies that make it easier for them to find those products. And you want to consider the assortment and as far as other categories. Something in one category that may not have a lot of good sales might be something that might boost sales in another category. For example, when I worked at Kimberly-Clark, we had Kleenex facial tissue, the pocket packs, on the checkout line. Now, those items are, in terms of total sales, are very low. But that was the product that drove customers back into the category, the facial tissue category, and the margins were high on it. The moral of the story is, by understanding the dynamics between different products in the market basket, we can help the retailer be very creative in their approach to capture more customers. And you would focus on the customer experience. Again, make it easier for them to find and buy your products. And you want to make this experience positive, friendly, and convenient. A lot of people pay lip service to it. But what's interesting, think about when you go to a website and you want to check out, or you're standing in a grocery line and you've got your cash in your hand and no one's coming to the store. No one's coming to help you check out of the store. Think about it from the consumer's perspective. What are the things that you can do to make it easy for them? You want to align your merchandising and your assortment around the retailer's persona. You've got to know who your retailer is so that you can build your strategies around what's important to them. And you don't want to rely on standard taxonomies. As I mentioned, they don't accurately represent or reflect the way the consumers buy your products. And that has a lot to do with the complexities of how the data is captured, et cetera. This is your opportunity to differentiate yourself. Again, this is my secret sauce. This is what I do. And when I roll up my sleeves and actually work for a brand. So how well do you know your retailer? Retailers don't need another canned report, the same report that every other brand shares with them. What they want are insights, fact-based insights, and they want to know everything. How they want those insights from the consumer's perspective, from the shopper's perspective. So what I'm getting at here is when you can differentiate the way that you communicate with the retailer to focus on how your unique shopper shops or store, and when they come into the store, what are the things that they buy? Now, align this or be able to build that strategy around what's important to the retailer. What does the retailer want? What do they expect from you as a brand? So again, how well do you know your retail partner? No two retailers are equal. And you never want to forget that. When I started in this industry, we used to take a presentation and we put a retailer's logo on it. And then we take that off and put a different retailer's logo on it. And it was customized for that next retailer, et cetera. That's not the way you want to do it. You want to understand who their customer is, and you want to respect them enough to be able to help them understand how your product fits into their portfolio, how your product aligns with their mission. You want to become an expert in the retailer, their strategies, and their rules. Some retailers, for example, will say, I want the private label to the right of the number one product in the category. Some will say the left. What's important to them and what matters to them? What are the rules in terms of how many items do they need to have on this shelf in terms of days of supply? All of those things. Make sure you understand them. And then what is the retailer's persona? There are a couple retailers in Colorado that want to be known as the total organic retailer of choice for all the customers in Boulder County, for example. Well, okay, how does your product fit into that persona? How does your product address that? And then always put the retailer first, always. The reason, again, is you don't want to use a cookie cutter strategy to support a retailer. Retailers want and need to feel special, just like your customers do. And this is how you develop that unique relationship with them that gives you a leg up. And you never want to assume anything. Ask questions. When I was carrying a sales bag for Unilever or Kimberly-Clark, or even for when I was a DSD chip person, a salesperson, I always got to know everyone who worked with the retailer. I got to know the buyer. I got to know the people who managed the warehouse, et cetera. And by getting to know them, they were able to give me insights that I wouldn't get if I just made a sales call on the retailer generically like everyone else does. The point is this. The more you can get to know your retailer intimately and understand what's important to them and build that relationship with them, then you can leverage that to get incremental sales, incremental opportunities, et cetera. And again, never apply a cookie cutter approach. That's what your competition does. That's what the brokers do, unfortunately. This is where you have an opportunity to differentiate yourself. And you always ask the question, how can you help the retailer improve the shopper journey? Remember, what I was saying a couple of minutes ago, how many times have you been standing at the checkout line, cash in hand, waiting for someone to come take it from you, and everyone's ignoring you? Think about how that impacts the customer's decision to go into that store the next time. Simple things like this that not everyone's paying attention to because they're so distracted with everything else that's going on. Focus on the long-term relationship. Remember, you're going to be working with that retailer for a very, very, very long time. Develop that relationship with them and help them understand why you can be a value-added resource. As it says here, become a value-added solution. Stay ahead of key trends. Share with the retailer what you're learning about in other categories. If you're a dog food, let's say that you're a baby food, and you go to a store and you see what someone's doing creatively with the dog food, bring those strategies back to the retailer. Maybe it's something that retailer can use. And never forget that shoppers have virtually unlimited choices. If the shopper can't find what they want in that store, they're going to simply go elsewhere. How can you help the retailer keep customers coming back into the store again and again and again? Now, when you work with brokers and distributors, you've got to understand who they are and what they offer and what they can offer for your brand, what they do for your brand. So when I worked at Unilever and Kimberly-Clark, we had what they call a direct sales force. Everyone on the sales team was getting paid by the same company. They went to the same trainings. We got the same information. We had the same incentive structure. So we were all on the same page. When you use an external sales team like a broker or distributor, then you're using people that aren't aligned with the same mission. And you've got to understand that. So what role should a broker or distributor play? How do you want to hold them accountable for what they're doing? How do you maximize your relationship with them? And the best way to do that is with a scorecard. Here's what I need you to do. Here's how I want you to execute. Here's what I need you to execute by, and then hold them accountable. And then more importantly, who's responsible for what? If the broker's responsible for getting the signs up in the store, great. Put that down on the scorecard. When are you going to hold them accountable? When do they need to have that done, et cetera? And you need to not have unrealistic expectations. Remember, they're working with literally hundreds of brands at times. So you want to understand not only what is their workload, but how can you make it easy for them to succeed on your behalf? And you want to communicate with them clearly. Assume nothing. Put everything in writing, and make sure that when you're working with brokers and distributors, that you understand not only exactly what they're going to do, but you want to hold them accountable to that. And you want to go back and revisit that and leverage this strategy so that you know exactly what they're doing for you on your behalf. And you want to support brokers and distributors with retailer-ready presentations. A lot of brands, what they do is they'll have their broker put together the presentation for them. And I think that's a huge mistake. They're going to use, again, cookie cutter templates that they're comfortable using with retailers. Here's your opportunity to develop a creative template. Remember, give the retailer what they want, but here's your opportunity to be creative in terms of how you work with the retailer. And then help brokers and distributors succeed on your behalf. Remember, their success is your success. And then use a scorecard, as I mentioned. I've got examples of scorecards. There's even a free guide on my website. If you go to the guide tab, you can download it about how to use a scorecard effectively. And you want to use SMART goals, and you want to hold everyone accountable to achieving those goals. And you want to revisit those goals on frequent interviews and get buy-in from everyone. In other words, make sure that everyone across your entire sales team is on board with your strategies. So why does this matter? Increased distribution, preferential merchandising, efficient trade spending. You get an opportunity to maximize each promotion. Category leadership. I believe a category leader is any brand willing and able to step up and help their retail partner succeed by leveraging the strength of your brand. Higher sales and profits, and then more importantly, this is how you convert occasional customers into loyal shoppers. Remember, shoppers want convenience and they want what they want. And if you can help the retailer deliver that, they're going to hopefully help you increase sales, give you incremental opportunities, et cetera. So this is from these next several slides. Some of these are from Social Nature, a project that they presented last week in the free weekly webinar series. And I wanted to share these because I think they're relevant to what we're talking about now, especially with the pandemic. Point is this: customers in both Canada and US feel optimistic about sales will increase over the next year. This is essentially the same information, but this is broken down by segment, by retail segment. As you can see, personal care, beverages, food, supplements. So how does a competitive strategy vary by country? As you can see in Canada, people are going to invest more money in growing market share, expanding market share compared to the US. The reason this matters is because they're leaning into this pandemic. They're taking advantage of it. They see the opportunity. In the US, we're going to focus more on innovation, which is a good thing, but I think we also need to expand market share too. And this is the same slide, only broken out by segment. And by the way, you can go back and look at this presentation again after it's over. It'll be on demand. So how does the channel focus by country? So look at e-commerce is more important to the US companies than it is to Canada. E-commerce needs to be an important part of your strategy no matter where you're at. And as I said, you can leverage that to drive sales in traditional brick and mortar. And so Here, we're talking about what are the things that they're doing to remain competitive in the digital environment. Like, for example, improving your website functionality, increasing your social digital advertising. And one of the things I wanted to highlight here is you don't necessarily need to pay a lot of money for that. If you have the right kind of strategy as far as a digital and social media strategy, you can leverage your community to help you grow in that area. And then 60% of consumers want feedback when they go online to look for a product, when they want product reviews. Here's where, again, you can leverage the strength of your community to provide those insights. When a consumer comes to your product on a shelf, they're going to pick it up and they're going to look at it, and they're going to want to go to your website to learn more about the product. And if you've got that information, customer testimonials, et cetera, on your website, it's going to make it easier for them to say yes to your products. So we all know that there are a lot of products that are easy to buy online. And as you can see here, cleaning supplies, snacks, et cetera, these are the items that customers like to buy online because they're easy, they're shelf stable, et cetera. Well, obviously that makes a lot of sense. However, if you're thinking about how does your product align to other products, produce, meat, dairy, seafood, et cetera, make sure you highlight that in your selling story. Make sure you help the retailer understand that when they buy your product, they're also buying fresh produce. So having your product in their store, in their assortment, complements not only the produce buyer, but it helps encourage customers to buy more, to spend more of their dollars when they're in that store. And there's a difference between Canadian and U.S. shoppers. So most Canadian shoppers trust organic more than U.S. shoppers, which I thought was really interesting. U.S. shoppers are beginning to use organic products more often. If you are what you eat, then what you matters. And you've probably heard me say that the example that I always use is that if I eat generic bread, I'm hungry almost before I finish eating it. If I eat the best mainstream bread, I may be satiated for a few hours. However, if I am what I eat and I eat organic bread and that gives me my body the nutrients that it needs, then I'll probably be satiated even longer. The point is this: help educate your customers and help educate the retailer on the value of your product and help communicate that effectively, not only through the retailer, but through your community. And there's a difference between Canadian and US shoppers. Not all shoppers are the same. We've talked about that. You want to become an expert in your ideal customer, and you want to personalize your communication with them. And like I said, build a community. And so as you look at this is essentially the same information, but broken down by age group. And what's interesting here is you get to see which customers are more loyal to certain ideas or how customers feel about organic versus non-organic, et cetera. Again, go back and review this on the replay. And there's a difference in the Canadian US or a US shopper. If you are what you eat, then what you eat matters, as I mentioned. But also food is medicine. And you want to highlight that. Customers want healthy products, especially now. The best defense against any virus is a healthy diet. And you want to leverage the strength of the customer that understands the real value of the organic products. In other words, the customer that gets that if they pay a few pennies more for that bread, for that organic bread, they're actually saving money long run because they don't eat as much of it. And there's a difference between the Canadian and the US shopper. Now, this is Health Focus International, and they're able to give me some great information. So Canadian customers buy organic products because they're healthier. US customers buy organic products because they're trying to get rid of pesticides and insecticides, et cetera. We need to do a much better job of communicating that organic products are healthier, as I've mentioned. So why does this matter? When you're looking at the total global economy, 52% of consumers think organic is healthier, whereas US only 30%. So we need to do a much better job of educating the customers in the US about the values of organic product. And this is essentially the same information, but broken down by age group. This matters because as you're having that personal conversation with your customer, you'll know how to target or how to speak directly to them. And one of the things that we need to get away from, I think one of the greatest opportunities in this industry, is we need to change the conversation. Instead of people saying organic is too expensive, we need to talk about the value of the organic food. Again, if I eat less of it, even though I pay more for it at shelf, I'm spending less money over time. And that's a better value to me. And more importantly, that gives my body the fuel that it needs, food that is medicine. And as Gary Hirschberg said on one of the podcast episodes, it makes a lot more sense to eat right rather than pay extra to pay a doctor to fix a problem that you created because you didn't eat correctly in the first time. And this is the same information broken down by age group. And again, go back and look at the presentation. I'm getting close to running out of time, so I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So go back and look at the presentation, and you can see what that says. So anyhow, Q&A. You can download Social Nature's presentation, their entire study. If you go to category, go to my website, /social insights. And then you can also download a trade marketing optimization checklist on my website. If you go to my website, /guide 18. So with that said, I'd like to open it up for questions. If you've got some additional questions, please put those in the chat and I will try to answer them for you. So Janice says, will this presentation be recorded? It is being recorded and it will be available again. So you can go back and watch it anytime you want. And then, of course, as you're watching it, you can control the slides and slow them down so you can see it a little bit better. Any other questions I can answer? Let me go back. I was talking to Dave yesterday. He's on the list. And hopefully these answer some of the questions we were talking about yesterday. Let me know in the chat, Dave, if they do. But these are some of the things that we're talking about. How do you develop a unique relationship, a personalized relationship with your retail partner, and then leverage? Oh, we got a question. Can we get a copy of it? Anyhow, leverage that relationship so that you can leverage that relationship with a retailer so that you can build that know, like, and trust. And then once you're able to do that, then you're in a position where you can help them drive incremental sales in their store. And Francisco says, can we get a copy of the presentation? I wasn't going to do that, but yeah, I'll make that available. So I'll send that. You know what I'll do? I will send that out to you. Oh, we got another question. Yay. Impressive presentation. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, what's great about this is I have so many great relationships in this industry. And there's so many people that are willing to help me help you. And again, this is why I do this. So reach out to me and let me know what challenges you have, what bottlenecks you face. And again, I'm here for you. So if you've got questions, please reach out to me and I'll try to answer it either on the podcast or here. By the way, the podcast and a lot of the courses are free. So go back and check those out. And I've interviewed the who's who in the industry, a lot of great interviews coming up still. But the point is, you get to listen to how they did things, how they solved a particular problem, and how they were to take advantage of some of these strategies. So go to my website and leverage that as a resource to help you grow and scale your brand. What other questions do we have? Okay, Deb's here. I've been asking me about how do you work more effectively with your distributor. That's a tough one, and the reason for that is because distributors want what they want. And so the answer to that question is you want to become a value-added resource to the retailer, and if the retailer will demand your product be on their shelf, and you can leverage the retailer's desire to have your product in distribution, then if depending on the size of the product and all that other stuff, then you might be able to leverage the retailer's relationship with the distributor to help them reduce some of the ridiculous fees that they charge or some of the bottlenecks or the things they put in front of you. So she says, thanks, super valuable, thank you. Some distributors have sales forces. Can you speak about those? Yeah. I would never, ever, 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 ever rely on a distributor sales force. And the reason, or even a broker, a broker, yeah, you can leverage those more effectively. But the problem is again, your mission is not aligned with them. I'm not saying brokers are horrible, bad, but the reason that we don't have distributors in mainstream is because they didn't provide the value that we expect to be able to get your product on the store shelf. What I'm getting at is you want to find people that are going to work and support your brand. And if they're not going to give you the kind of support that you need and deserve, then you need to go elsewhere to get that support. And so I would much rather, if I were a brand, figure out a way to have a one-on-one relationship with the end consumer directly. So put them on an email list. I just finished a module for the course that I'm working on, Trade Marketing Essentials, on how you can develop a community or a relationship with your brand. So I'll be putting that out. So be looking for that. But I hope that helps. So how about brand ambassadors? You know what? Actually, that's exactly what I was getting at. If you can leverage a brand ambassador to go into the different stores and help fill those gaps, then that's the way to go. In fact, on that note, one thing that drives me nuts is that if a distributor gets a commission for going into a store to sell more product, but then if you want to know what stores they sell to, they charge you money for that report. Doesn't make any sense to me. You'd think that if they were smart, they would just give you that information, let you close the sales gaps, and then they'd make more money as a result. So you've got to figure out, how do you have that high touch point with your customers? So, and then Dave says, thanks, Dan. As we discussed yesterday, our biggest challenge is getting in front of the retailers and getting them to simply respond. Some of these tips can help. I'm still looking for ways to make that breakthrough. As Dave, as we were talking about, and just a little bit of information. I mean, I don't want to embarrass or put anyone on the spot. What we were talking about is, how do you break through? A lot of retailers are so focused on how do you gain margin in one item, and they're not thinking about the category. They're not thinking about the stuff we talked about. So how do we help get beyond the retailers, the retail buyers that don't understand what we're trying to solve? And one of the things that I suggested is send them a postcard or find some way to reach out to them. One of the things, Dave, that I've done is I will find out who works at the retailer on LinkedIn, because that's free, obviously, and then try to figure out, how do you make those connections? How do you work your way up to other people within that organization, leverage other people that might sell into different areas within that retailer? Anyhow, so the postcard idea was kind of hit them in the face and say, you know what, our product is growing by X% at the retailer down the street. Hey, if you want to talk about how we can leverage this to drive customers in your store, then give me a call, that kind of thing. And again, the challenge is, there are a lot, when I was a retailer, as I said, brands would come in and they would say, here's what you need to do for me. Here's what I want you to do. And retailers are tired of that. And a few bad apples spoils the bunch. That's kind of the mindset. So instead, what I had to do is I had to go to the retailers and prove to them that I was more than just a traditional brand, that I was going to help them grow sales. And there were a couple times where I actually went to the retailer and I said, look, if I can't keep the shelf full, or if I can't keep the display full, kick my butt out of the store. And that's kind of extreme. But my point is, what can you do to disrupt them, to break their preoccupation and help them understand the value that you bring to the store and why you can do more to help them grow sales in their categories than anyone else? And so Francisco says, what do you suggest we do to get UNFI and KE's attention in the U.S.? We are listed with them in Canada. In fact, okay. So, Francisco, one of the problems are brands in their shells and stuff. Well, let me ask you, Francisco, the first question is, do you really want to be in UNFI and KE in the U.S.? That's the first question. In other words, if you could go direct to those retailers, that might be better. So that's the first question. The second question is, obviously you leverage your relationship with the retailers that you already have in Canada with UNFI and KE. Now, what I would do in addition to that is I would present your product to some brands in the US and have those brands reach out to UNFI and KE on your behalf and say, hey, we want this product on the shelf. You need to get it in distribution. And that's the pull strategy. And by the pull strategy, that's the way you might be able to get them to try to pull your product onto their shelf. So people like Publix want to work with them, and so does Whole Food. Yes, in fact, if you use Range Me, that's how you get your product onto Whole Foods. Publix, I think they can help you there too. Pretty sure they can. And so the point being is that if you can get Whole Foods, for example, they're the primary distributor for Whole Foods. If you can get Whole Foods to put it on your shelf, on their shelf, then you can have them call up UNFI and say, get this product on the shelf. I want it in my store. By the way, when you're thinking about growing your brand, sometimes it's more effective to grow it in a mainstream retailer where you can grow and scale faster. So what do I mean by that? If you could get your brand in Publix, then you might have an opportunity to explode sales faster than you would at Whole Foods, where you have to go and call in every different store, et cetera. There's a lot more legwork involved, et cetera. The point being is, think about the most effective path for you to get in front of customers. And that goes back to that turnkey sales story strategies course. You're an expert now in your customer. Where does your customer shop? How does your customer shop your product? And by the way, I'm putting in modules in the Trade Marketing Essentials course. So Francisco says, thank you. You're welcome. And reach out to me if you want to have a conversation outside of this, and I can help walk you through a lot of that stuff. These are great questions. Thank you so much. One of the things, how about online brand ambassadors? Deborah says, yes, absolutely. In fact, if you build a community around your brand, a bunch of evangelists around your brand online, and someone says something that's not flattering about your brand or whatever, they will defend you, which is really cool. And you don't have to pay for it. But if you build a community of online brand ambassadors around your brand, then they're going to go out and sing your praises. So in your situation, instead of saying, look, I want the sugary mints, et cetera, people are going to say, no, you don't want that. Try this brand instead. And the reason that matters is that helps you become more relevant. It helps you, it gives you that social proof. And then you can go to the retailer and say, look what these people are saying about my product. Okay. So that's another great strategy. Online ambassadors are influencers. Yeah, they are. Actually, anyone's an influencer. Think about it this way. If you can get just some regular person to say, hey, this is a great product, that's sometimes more valuable than having someone who's a paid celebrity. And the reason that matters, that's Francisco's question. The reason that matters is because that regular person, Joe, Sally, whatever her name is, they're more like me. And if they like the product and they're going to use the product and they get benefit from the product, well, hey, it probably will work for me. Whereas a lot of people look at a celebrity and say, well, they're probably getting paid big bucks for that. I wonder if they really use the product anyhow. So think about your relationship with your community. Again, this is the best way to future-proof your brand. Go back and watch that how do you future-proof your brand and how do you future-proof your store free webinar, and that will help you understand how to relate to the retailer. And back to your question, Francisco and David, if you can do that, that's going to help you make inroads. And Dave, back to what we were talking about yesterday, if you can get into the natural retailers within the market of the mainstream retailer that you're targeting, that's going to give them added incentive to get your product on the shelf. So if you're in Colorado, for example, I would go to King Soopers. King Soopers is gateway to Kroger. If you could get your product in Sprouts and in Whole Foods and in natural grocers, that's in Colorado, right? And you could do really well, then I would take that sales story to Kroger, to King Soopers, and say, hey, I'm kicking butt outside of your store. You guys are one of the most progressive mainstream but natural retailers in the country, mainstream consumers. So why don't you guys have my products on your shelf? And again, this is all about how do you prove the value of the customer that you drive into the store. At the end of the day, that's what retailers really want. And like we were talking about yesterday, Dave, a lot of those those brands, a lot of those retailers that overlook that, they do that to their peril. I think we're going to see a lot of retailers, a lot of traditional mainstream retailers go under this year. And honestly, some of them needed to. So hopefully your point is accurate proof. So yeah, anyhow, I definitely would leverage that. So I'm sorry, Francisco says, your point is accurate proof. We were listed low balls and everyone else in Canada jumped on the, yes, thank you, Francisco. So what he's saying is, let me read it so it makes sense. Your point is accurate proof. Your point is accurate. Proof is we were listed at low balls and then everyone else in Canada jumped on the bandwagon. Thank you, Francisco, for sharing that. And then Tom says, yes, there's a better way. There's a better aisle and shelf for your store. How can you, say there's a better aisle and shelf for your store and your product. How can you make a case for remove? Oh, I love this question. Thanks, Tom. So the answer to that question is, again, how does a consumer look at the product? How does a consumer buy their product? By the way, I've gone over, I'll keep going as long as you guys want to ask questions. So the answer to your question is, how does your consumer buy the product? I give you an example. Several years ago, I did a project for Dang Foods, and they were in several different departments in the store. And I had them do an informal Facebook study, and we had shoppers say, this is where they want the product. This is how they buy the product. This is how they use the product. We were able to leverage that plus some fact-based insights that we, from a Nielsen, from buying product data from Nielsen, and then I was able to put all that together, and then they were able to go to the retailer and say, here's where our product belongs in the produce section. This is why it belongs there. Our customers are looking for it there. When customers buy our product, they're buying a lot of other products as well. So in other words, there's an incremental impulse type purchase to salads and that kind of product. The point is this, again, how does a customer buy the product? How does the customer purchase or use your product after they take it home? How do they evangelize it with their friends? Remember, these are the actionable insights that other brands are not providing the retailer. This is far more value than a canned top line report. And if you leverage this with the retailer, this is how you help the retailer compete more effectively in their store. I hope I answered your question. And by the way, they were able to get into all 1,600 stores of that retailer, and they were able to explode sales, and their brand is just on fire. So, pleased to have been proud to have been a part of that. Any other questions I can answer for you guys? Great questions, by the way. Thank you for bringing them. Well, I know that we're over time. So again, I'm going to make this available to everyone through the replay. It's going to be on the cloud in Zoom. So it's not going to be on YouTube. I've been putting some of the videos on YouTube, so you can go there. Thank you very much for doing this. Appreciate your help. Francisco, thank you. I mean, really, guys, I appreciate you for being here. Thank you. This is why I do this. This is why I work so hard to provide this kind of value. And then Francisco, I'll go ahead and say, I tell you what, if you guys want me to send you the presentation, send me an email and I'll make it available to you, okay? Because it's actually kind of a large presentation. It's about, I think it's like 30 or 40 megabytes large, so it's too big to email. So send me your email address and awesome presentation. Hey, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. So my email address is up in the chat. It's dan@cmsforcpg.com. If you want to schedule time to talk to me, please do. Go to my URL, brandsecretsandstrategies.com/30MIN, the number 30MIN, and you can schedule some time to talk to me. Dave and I had a great conversation yesterday. I've had conversations with Deb. I believe I'm talking to Tom in a couple of weeks. So, and then, all of you guys are welcome. So Francisco, send me your email address. I might have it, but send me your email address and I will send you a link to the presentation. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, guys and gals, thank you so much for being here. And next week, don't forget the next week's webinar. Please share this with your community, with the people you know. Again, these insights are free. These courses, these webinars are free. And let me know what I can do to help. Let me know what bottlenecks you have. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday, same time. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Dan. This was amazing. Philip, you are absolutely welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, so